Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know a quick update. Elite Dangerous is coming out today. I don't know exactly when the download is. In fact, I may have downloaded it by the time this video was published. But who knows? Anyway, it's Tuesday. Elite Dangerous is out today, and people are going to want to know from me, should I actually buy this game? And probably also, is this guy capable of giving an honest review? So here are my notes. Notes on the full-blown review for Elite Dangerous based on a Gamma build. So I wanted to mention, first of all, this game actually comes from a 30-year-long heritage of, what did I put down here? Oh yeah, Space Combat Trader the Space Combat Trader Mercenary genre. And that genre was really pioneered by the author of Elite Dangerous, David Braben. He was one of the very, I think, like one of two or three programmers that made the original Elite. It was an unprecedented game at its time, as everyone else was sticking quarters in game machines. Home computers like the Commodore 64 and the BBC Micro had Elite on it, and it was a pretty unforgiving game then. You didn't have a whole lot of information on what you were supposed to do or anything, and a lot of times you blew up within 2 minutes of starting up the game. So from that heritage, David Braben carried forward the Elite series into a couple of other versions, Elite Frontier and stuff like that, that had quite a lot of fan following. In fact, there's still active mods and redistributions of that game that float around. But here is now the 30-year-old quintessential remake of the original Elite in modern hardware, as it were. And the question that everyone's going to ask probably by this point is, how come you haven't told me? Should I buy this game or not? The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, if you like spaceflight / space combat / space trader games, which I do, by the way. I grew up on them. I think they're awesome. So I should like to note that this game is actually based on a pre-release version of the game, which it's called Gamma, but the major experiences in the game aren't going to change between this review and the full release. There might be some tweaking and balancing here and there on dollar amounts for various things, or how the background simulation runs, and you'll hear more about that later. But largely what you see here on the screen is what you're getting in as far as gameplay content is concerned. And I think you'll agree it's pretty darn good. So I'm going to actually go into detail. I have some categories here we'll go over. I have 5 categories: gameplay, controls, challenge level, presentation, and unique elements. So we're going to go over those and then come up with our conclusion as far as why I think you should buy and yet you will enjoy this take on the space flight, space combat, space trader type of genre game. Category number 1, gameplay. I give gameplay an 18 out of 20 points. And it comes down to these little points here. My notes. These points here. Okay, point number 1. Space combat is rich, tactical, and engaging. I gave that 5 out of 5 points. So the space combat, you really got to be thinking about how your ship's moving, how your enemy ship is, how your enemy target is moving. You're managing with a pretty easy set of controls, power distribution levels for your various systems, including shields and weapons and maneuverability. And while in a 1v1 situation, certain ships will just dominate other ships, this is true. Every ship has strengths and weaknesses, and those can be exploited in a tactical way. As of release, there's a good variety of playable ships. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. In order to score perfect in this one, I would expect a huge variety of playable ships, a bunch of different options for people who prefer to trade, a bunch of different options for people who want to go bounty hunting, a bunch of different options for explorers, and a bunch of different options that are hybrids that can allow you to customize, sort of dual role ships that aren't as good as the single role ships in any one of those, but are pretty capable in 2 or more roles. They have a good selection of ships. It's a nice solid selection. There's plenty of progression available, but I was kind of hoping for a little more to start off with, so I gave that a 4 out of 5. There's a great balance between ships, which I mentioned already. You can't get cocky in any particular ship, because a squad of goons can come along and ruin your day, even with less of investment. So I give that one a 5 out of 5, and yeah, so that's a perfect as far as I'm concerned. I mentioned a couple of ways that probably hinted at the availability of PvP. Yes, if you're playing in open play, which is the style that I prefer to play in, PvP is wide open and allowed. However, they managed to balance the game where PvP is allowed and fun with minimal griefing. Griefing happens occasionally, but the in-game penalties for people who are being murderous hobo griefers are so steep that you quickly get bored of that. It's like that gets really boring really, really fast. The griefers stay away. Now, the successful pirates or the successful PvPers, they will really stand out. Like if you hear someone's name in the message board saying, "Hey, keep an eye out for this guy. He's a doomed pirate in a particular area," then that's worthy of note because they've managed to overcome the challenge that's in the game to minimize griefing and excel at being a space pirate, which is totally awesome. So anyway, I gave that a 4 out of 5 because in order to be perfect here, and this might be an unattainable standard, I'll admit that, but in order to be perfect here, to get a 5 out of 5, I would expect the systems to be in place that would all but completely eliminate griefing and allow for, while at the same time, allow for legitimate PvP interactions such as piracy and things like that. But that takes care of the gameplay category. So overall, the gameplay category scored 18 out of 20. I'm going to go on to controls now. Controls are highly customizable. I give it a 5 out of 5. You can, the menus there, you can customize the controls between your keyboard and your various control inputs however you want to. There are many control schemes available, but a flight stick, like a decent flight stick, is the preferred control scheme. Some of them you'll have a more difficult time, and other people will have an advantage over you, which is why I gave it 4 out of 5. I would, in order to score perfectly in this category, or in this heading, I would expect that no matter which control scheme you use, if you really practice at it and get pretty good with it, that you would be able to, you'd be just as able to fly the ship as anyone else. But I found that keyboard and mouse users, while being pretty darn good, still suffer a little bit of a disadvantage just fundamentally against those people who use a flight stick. And even in my case, if I use the flight stick scheme I have set up, if someone's using a full-blown HOTAS, they have an advantage over me. So, it's not a huge advantage. That's why I give it a 4 out of 5, but the advantage exists nonetheless. Some minor options are missing in the controls, so I give this, as far as the options that are available, a 4 out of 5. In order to score perfectly, I would expect to be able to have tons of options on how I want to set up my controls. For instance, I have little toggle buttons in the front of my joystick that have a down position and an up position. In order to score perfectly, I would like to be able to use the down position for something like deploy landing gear and the up position for retract landing gear. But instead, all I have is the option to quote-unquote toggle landing gear. So I don't get to use the full capabilities of my particular flight stick. And one of the things is that really to enjoy the game, the controls require you to customize them. The default layouts aren't particularly good. They're okay to start with, and I guess if you learn them, you can get really excellent at them. But there are more efficient ways to play the game, and the first thing you want to do is going to want to go and customize all the controls to your liking, and then make tweaks to them as you go along, discovering new capabilities. So I give that a 3 out of 5. In order to get a 5 out of 5 on that line, I would expect the default options to be pretty darn good, with maybe a couple of tweaks here and there for your individual flavor, but really you got to go in there and customize your controls to begin with. Okay, so on controls, I've given that a total of 16 out of 20 points. Okay, the next category is challenge level. The first bullet point I have down here in my notes is that there's a great range of challenges based on your particular style of play. So I give that a 5 out of 5. There's a whole range of different ways you can play the game, and each of them is challenging in different ways, which is pretty cool. The learning curve when you first get into the game is very steep, and the game itself when you're playing it is pretty darn unforgiving when you first start off. So I give that a 2 out of 5. And in order for this to get a 5 out of 5 or even a higher score, I would expect the learning curve to be more like you start off here, things are easier, they start getting more and more difficult, but instead they start off pretty high. And to overcome that, you've got to watch tutorials, which Frontier Development already has available online. You go through some single-player combat scenarios to get a hang of how the game plays before you can really start getting in and enjoying open play. Yeah, the learning curve is pretty steep and unforgiving to begin with. Hopefully, as they work on the game, there's going to be some continuous development on even after release that will get a little bit more friendly. The tutorials are lacking, but they're getting better. They're actually publishing tutorials on the YouTube channel. It's unfortunate you have to go to the YouTube channel rather than them being available in the game for you to use. So I give that a 3 out of 5. I would expect in order to get a 5 out of 5, I would expect all the tutorials, the basic tutorials you need to operate your ship, to be in-game and literally walk you through each step and explain why you have to do what you have to do. So I give that tutorials a 3 out of 5. PvP is always, or can always be present and offers a great challenge if you're in open play. PvP is optional. You can play solo. You still get all the interactive events and stuff that are going on from the centralized galactic server, but you don't have to deal with other players if you don't want to. At any time that you're playing in open play, someone can come and engage you in PvP, and that always gets the blood flowing. And they, like I mentioned before, they're able to do this with minimized griefing. So I give that a 5 out of 5. So in the overall challenge level category, I've given it a 15 out of 20 points. Next, we'll take a look at presentation. The graphics are highly detailed from space to ships to stations. I'd give this a 5 out of 5. Space is richly rendered. It's ridiculously gorgeous, and every place you go is fascinating. And 99.99%, and I'm not even kidding, this isn't hyperbole, 99.99% of all points of light in space that you see on your screen are visitable. You can go there and you can check them out and you can see them up close, and some of them are stunning and awe-inspiring. So I give this a 5 out of 5. Some people have gone as far as going to the Orion Nebula and checking out all the stars there. You see stars all over the place. You see the big dust clouds everywhere. It really is truly amazing the places you can go and the stuff that you can see. All the actual ships in the game are detailed, varied, and practical. Like when you look at a ship, even the little slice of toast that is the first Sidewinder, like literally looks like a slice of or a grilled cheese sandwich. But it makes sense why it's built that way. You can see you can see every detail. You can see where all your maneuvering thrusters are. You can see where hard points deploy. You can see the little vents. And if people are actually looking outside into your ship, they can see your vents opening and closing as your ship manages heat. Even things like your laser guns, get a good camera viewpoint. Like your laser guns are pointing off the front of your ship, and if depending on the ship, you might actually be able to see them out of your front window. As they heat up, they start glowing red, giving off black body radiation in order to cool off. So all those little details really make a huge difference, and I give that a 5 out of 5. It's perfect as far as I'm concerned. Most menus for the game are actually in-game menus, and they look great. So you're not only interacting with the menu, but you're interacting with the game world live. Like you're sitting there in a docking port, other people are flying around, you're in your ship interacting with menus to do all the stuff you would do as a pilot. Some minor issues do make them a little bit hard to use sometimes, but overall they're really awesome. So I give them a 4 out of 5. In order to get perfect in this category, I would expect the menus to have a slightly more logical layout as far as the ordering, and there are a couple of menus here and there where you click on an option, for example, and then you're taken to a menu where the only option is, yes, this is actually what I meant. So, on the presentation category overall, I am giving the presentation 19 out of 20 points. And now we go into the kind of the more specific stuff, which is specific for Elite Dangerous. As I'm doing reviews, if I do other games going forward, I want to make sure to give each game some due recognition for the unique elements that are available in that game, pretty much in that game only. Elite Dangerous has a rich background simulation. Every action that the player does influences this background simulation as far as trade prices, local allegiances, and things like that. So that rich background simulation is very Eve-esque. If you've played Eve online, there's a rich background simulation going on there as well. And so I give that a 5 out of 5. The background simulation, however, this is a note on that. The background simulation may seem random as it's not readily apparent to everyone that interacts with it. So you might do some trading and you might realize all of a sudden that your profit margins have disappeared and you're not exactly sure why. It might turn out that you and a couple of other players have been running that same trade route because of a wide profit margin and have just tapped out the supply and demand for those particular destinations you're going back and forth to. To you, it might seem a little bit random. You might not know that's the case necessarily. So I give those 3 out of 5 points. Every single player can truly influence the universe. So this background simulation tracks all the stuff that you're doing, including trading, bounty hunting, which missions you're taking, which factions in a particular area you're favoring, and we'll take that into account as far as local stuff going on. So I give that a 5 out of 5. There's no better way to have that type of influence on the universe around you. Here's a unique kind of thing. Elite Dangerous was founded on Newtonian physics. Now, they've taken some shortcuts in the actual coding where they're not running all the Newtonian physics calculations, but how ships behave are based on Newtonian physics. But in order for gameplay reasons, they had to do some balancing and do things like ships have a maximum velocity and you slow down in space, but it's but that's all actually done with like flight assist and things like that. Your thrusters will automatically fire to adjust your ship and things like that. And you see that it's really a really good mix of basing it on Newtonian physics, mass and inertia and thrust and everything like that, and making the game playable. All the ships have their thrusters positioned such that it makes realistic sense as far as why a ship can pitch and roll really fast, but not yaw very fast. You see all those little details play out in each of the ship types, which is really cool. So I gave that particular point a 5 out of 5. The unique elements portion of this review, this fully honest, straightforward review for Elite Dangerous, I have given that an 18 out of 20. And if your math is half as good as my math, you'll find that the conclusion is based on all 5 of these categories added up. We end up with an 86 out of 100. So I would say that, yes, you should buy this game if you like spaceflight combat trader games, because this one is a solid, enjoyable game for any spaceflight / space combat / space trader / space mercenary game fans, or space explorers for that matter. I hope to see you guys online playing this game. Since this is about Elite Dangerous and my tagline is keep flying and stay shiny, that's where I'm going to leave it. So until next time, goodbye. Space combat. Scratching myself in the middle of an interview. The challenge that's in the game I forgot. Allow for legitimate PvP. That was a terrible intro.